We are experiencing one of the coldest starts to winter in many years, probably since 2010, which was the worst winter in 100 years, where the snow and the depth of cold for many weeks in December decimated plants all across the UK and Northern Europe. But I think having a cold spell like this can have its benefits. Now I'm here with my Gunra Manicarta, the leaves blackened off, covered in days worth of frost on frost. It's been sub-zero for 3 days solid. We've had temperatures down to minus 5.5 I believe, and it is absolutely freezing. I'm filming this at midday and it's still, as you can see, sub-zero. The ground is completely frozen through. The ice is thick on my pond and everywhere looks pretty awful in the garden because it's been so cold. But I know from experience most plants in this garden will come through, and if there's any losses, there'll only be inconsequential losses that I know I can replace, or it's an area where I can bring new plants into. But for a lot of people, this is probably the first experience of a proper cold spell, especially if you're new to exotic gardening. But I think this can be a good thing, mainly because it will stop people falling into the safe sense that everything's hardy, or it's been hardy for 2 or 3 years, therefore it will continue growing and thriving through all the winters and it'll never die or get cut back. By having this cold spell now, I think it's a bit of a reality check for people that although we've got the climate changing and overall as a planet we are warming up, it doesn't mean that we don't get cold periods. It doesn't mean that every year is getting warmer than the previous year. Maybe overall the planet is, over years after years, it's probably getting warmer and warmer, but it doesn't mean your location every year will be warmer than last year. So we can't think just because you've had a plant in a garden that people have said are half hardy, you've grown it and it's survived for 2 or 3 years and you think it's hardy. That is not the case. We're always going to get cold spells, we're always going to get cold winters, interspersed between the milder winters like we've had for the last few years. So although it's not nice to see, and if you've not grown lots of half-hardy plants before, you've not wrapped them up because you think they're hardy, then it can be a bit soul destroying come spring when things don't come back into growth or die off. I think it's a good lesson to have that experience of a bad winter or a bad spell in winter, and it will probably make you more cautious in the future about what plants you buy. But hopefully, more important lesson we take away from this is it's really important to protect plants that might be susceptible to cold. Yes, they might get through many winters unprotected, but is it worth really not protecting a plant for the sake of a few pounds, the sake of a bit of effort that might die otherwise? It might get through, like I said, you might get a run of 6-7 years where, for instance, you've got a Phoenix canariensis, you've got a Musa baju, you've got something like that where the foliage can easily get killed if it gets frosted. Is it worth letting that happen, or would you rather protect it? It's down to personal preference, obviously, because some plants and your location comes into the equation as well, especially for things like Musa baju. You can wrap it up with loads of straw insulation. We've done videos on that, talk about it every year, and that will pretty much guarantee the stems will get through pretty much any winter. But most winters, in a lot of locations, it won't need any wrapping up whatsoever. It would have got through winter totally fine. But you get a spell like this and you realise why people have wrapped them up for years and years. It's because you're going to get cold periods from time to time, even if you're in the south. Even, dare I say, if you're on the coast, you might get a cold snap which will kill off plants that are borderline for your location. So it's really worth thinking about what plants you grow, taking stock, especially come spring. If things don't come back, will you replace them? Will you try hardier plants, or will you go down the route of actually protecting plants better or taking cuttings as an insurance policy? There's lots of ways we can get around this, and I think having a cold spell is a bit of a wake-up call for a lot of people, and hopefully people will sort of either think, no, I'm not going to grow tender plants because I can't be bothered with the effort, which is fine, and you can grow hardy plants, or you'll go for the effort of protecting the tender and half hardy plants so that you can have peace of mind that they're going to get through winters no matter how cold it gets.